Hi friends, once again I welcome to all into my YouTube channel Literature Insights. If you have not subscribed my YouTube channel yet, so please subscribe it by pressing the bell icon button for getting further notification and updates of my videos. So in my last tutorial we have seen the ballad as a significant form or type of poetry in English literature. So in my today's tutorial I am going to explain you another major form or type of poetry in English literature, the elegy. So in this video I am going to explain you some major points like origin of the elegy, meaning of the elegy, features of the elegy, and some of the best examples of elegy. Along with this elegy I am going to explain you subtype of elegy, that is pastoral elegy. So then in that Pastoral Elegy I am going to explain you the meaning of Pastoral Elegy, features of Pastoral Elegy, and some of the best examples of Pastoral Elegy in English literature. So let's see the first point, origin of the elegy. The elegy is a form of poetry in literature that can be defined as a poem or a song in the form of elegiac couplet written in praise or sorrow of someone who is dead or deceased. So now here it is very essential to understand the learners of English literature what is elegy. So elegy is a form or a type of poetry in literature that can be defined as a poem or a song in the form of elegiac couplets. So it is an elegiac measure. By using the elegiac couplets it is written in praise or sorrow or lamentation of someone who is dead or deceased. Then there is another definition given by Merriam-Webster dictionary defines elegy is a song or poem expressing sorrow or lament especially for one who is dead. So now these are the two definitions I have given here. So it is very significant for the learners of English to understand the meaning of elegy. So elegy is a poem particularly lamenting on the dead or deceased one. So then now there is a significant point is that the etymology of the word elegy. So now the elegy was borrowed from the Greek word elegos, which means a mournful poem or a song or a funeral lament on the death of someone. So these are the significant meanings of elegy. Then we move towards the next point, that is features of elegy. So the elegy can be easily identified by the following features or characteristics as follows. So number one, the elegy is a poem that deals with the subject of death or mortality but has no set form of meter, pattern, or rhyme scheme. So it is a free from all structural patterns. Then second point is the elegy deals with the emotional appeals or experiences of the poet. Elegies are generally written in a first person narration. So in elegy we can generally find there are emotional appeals and experiences expressed by the poet. Along with this, the elegy always written in a first person narration. Then a third characteristic is the grief is the dominant emotion in the early part of elegy and it closes with the optimistic tone. So just we have seen there is a structure of the elegy which is divided into three parts. In the first part there the poet expresses grief or sorrow about someone who is dead. In the second part the poet expresses praise or admiration for the dead one. And in the last part we have seen there is a consolation and solace. Fourth point is end on somewhat a hopeful note with the poet reconciling himself to the death and ultimately discovering some form of consolation. So destination of the elegy is ultimately consolation or solace. Fifth characteristic is the poetic form known as elegiac stanza, which have a specific pattern and rhyme scheme, generally AB, and it is a different from an elegy. Then we will see the next point, that is examples of the elegy. So here I have cited some of the famous examples of elegy in English literature. So number 1, elegy written in a country churchyard by Thomas Gray. Number 2, O Captain, My Captain by Walt Whitman. Number 3, In Memory of W.B. Yeats by W.H. Auden. Number 4, The Role of Elegy by Mary Jo Bank. So these are the most important elegies written in literature. We have seen the elegy is a mournful song on the death of someone. So now we will move towards the another point, that is a pastoral elegy, which is considered as a subtype of elegy. So now see here, the pastoral elegy was a subtype of elegy introduced during the period of Renaissance in literature. So now the pastoral elegy was introduced in literature during the period of Renaissance in literature, that is called 16th century period or the revival period of literature. Then pastoral elegy is a poetry that typically deals with the countryside and rural life, which often depicts the lives of shepherds. So pastoral elegy is concerned, or we can generally define pastoral elegy as the life of shepherds, so which deals with the life of shepherds using the rural or countryside picturesque images. Now pastoral elegy is about the rustic lives of the rural dwelling poets. So the poets are also belonging to the same background of that rustic and rural area. In pastoral elegy, the poet usually represents himself as a shepherd. Oh, there is a Latin word for the pastor is for shepherd. Now here in this poem we can find pastoral elegy. The poet particularly laments upon the loss of his close friend. This poetic form was originated by the Sicilian Greek poet Theocritus and continued by the Roman Virgil. Later on it was developed in various European countries during the Renaissance period of literature or 16th century. The setting of pastoral elegy is following particular conventions and using particular imagery or picturesque images drawn from the rural life or rural scenery. Particularly we can find in a pastoral elegy there are the picturesque images like river, tree, mountain are represented in a pastoral elegy, which represents the rural or rustic life of the shepherds. Now Milton and Arnold refer to their poems monodies and not elegies. So now here it is very essential to understand the meaning of monodies. So monody is an elegy or dirge performed by one person on the death of someone. So this is called monody. So it is very significant to understand what is monody. So now let's see the features of pastoral elegy. So here I have given some of the features that define pastoral elegy as follows. So number 1, the pastoral elegy typically starts with the invocation of muse. So now here muses means, or muse means the goddesses of poetry. So now here we can find the initial part of the pastoral elegy. The poem simply calls the muses or goddesses of poetry and goes on to make frequent reference to other figures from classical mythology. So in pastoral elegy we can find a number of mythological references. Number 2, the manner of speech and the setting are borrowed from the rustic life. Whatever poet wants to say or describe is in a shepherd's language. So now it is very important, the speech and setting are generally borrowed from the rustic life of shepherd, and whatever the poet wants to say or convey, that is represented through a shepherd's language or a rustic language. Now number 3, the mourner charges with negligence of her nymphs. So now in the pastoral elegy, when the poet mourns on his accompanied friend or close friend, he is simply negligible to the nymphs. So here is a reference of nymphs, means goddesses of Greek and Roman mythology and other guardians of a dead shepherd. So they are negligible. In ancient Greek and Roman traditional stories, a goddess or a spirit in the form of a young woman living in a tree, a river and mountain, etc. So now it is called as a goddesses of poetry that is represented in a pastoral elegy. The next feature is these poems typically begins with an expression of the poet's grief or sorrow or lament, more on to contemplate death and morality. So in pastoral elegy, generally we can see the poet's laments or express his grief or melancholy on the death of their friend, and more on to contemplate upon their death and morality. Then another feature is the questions are raised by the poets about destiny, justice and fate in concern of the death of their friend. The closing part of the pastoral elegy is consolation and solace, which is very significant. In Christian elegies, the lyric reversal from grief and despair to joy and assurance typically occurs when the elegist suddenly realizes that the death in this world is the entry to higher life. So ultimate salvation is death, which is highest into the life. Then there are some of the famous examples of pastoral elegies in English literature as follows. Number 1, Edmund Spenser's Astrophil on the death of Sir Philip Sidney. Number 2, John Milton's Lycidas. Number 4, P.B. Shelley's Adonis. Number 4, Matthew Arnold's Tiresias. And number 5, Lord Tennyson's In Memoriam. So these are the significant pastoral elegies written in English literature. So generally we can see the elegy is nothing but it is a lamentation or a grief upon the death of someone. So I try to explain you elegy as a significant form or type of poetry in English literature. I hope you should understand it. If you have any questions or queries regarding this tutorial or elegy, so you should comment me in my comment box regarding your questions and problems. I will try to answer your questions and problems. So with this I stop here. If you like my videos, please share and subscribe my YouTube channel Literature Insights among your friends and fraternity of literature.